Well, hi, welcome to the Coach's Corner. I'm Frank Barbehenn, and I will be your discipleship coach for this week, with your permission. This is number 3, and today we're focusing on a Catholic perspective on suffering. In contrast to Protestants, Catholics really tend to have a much more of a focus and much greater depth of dialogue and meditation on human suffering. They historically have had a depth of theology to suffering. They have what you can call a theology of suffering. And you don't have that vocabulary with Protestants. You don't typically hear Protestants talk about a theology of suffering. And it's partly why the crucifix still exists for the Catholic Church. They continue to have Jesus on the cross, not because they don't believe in the resurrection, but because they so deeply value the sufferings of Christ and what Christ has done to deal with human suffering. Now, I want to share with you several points that Pope John Paul II wrote in an encyclical. He's a very interesting pope. He himself suffered enormously in his life, and time doesn't permit to go into that. But I want to share a number of points very, very quickly, briefly, from his encyclical, just to give you a little flavor for the depth of the thinking within the Catholic Church on suffering. He says a number of things. He says that suffering is an inescapable feature of our existence. And he even says that every human life with suffering is a question, and the Lord is the answer. He says good can emerge from suffering if we play our hand right. Interestingly, Pope John Paul says that suffering teaches humility, and at the heart of it teaches us that we are not God. And I've thought about that for a while, and actually that's a very powerful point. As human beings, we tend to get pretty arrogant, and we tend to want to be like God in a number of ways, and suffering really does teach us our place in the universe, like it or not. Pope John Paul also shared that suffering is transformative, that if we play it right, we can build changes into our life that are positive. Suffering can also be a natural consequence to our immoral behavior. He says innocent people suffer like Job, and so there's not a nice, neat formula for understanding suffering. He says Christ's suffering saves us by entering our suffering, and historically, Catholics have been very focused on how Christ's suffering saves us by entering our suffering, and Protestants don't tend to focus on that as much. And that meaning, the meaning of our suffering becomes clearer as we meditate on and enter Christ's sufferings, and once again, we don't have much of a focus on that in Protestant circles, on actually meditating on and entering Christ's suffering. We focus on the resurrection. And finally, that joy emerges from overcoming the sense of the uselessness of suffering. Protestants don't think of suffering as useless. We tend to think of suffering as always having some divine meaning to it. And that gives us some sense of purpose and some sense of control. Well, your thoughts, questions, blog me at the Coach's Corner, or email me at frank@peakperformancediscipleship.com, frank@peakperformancediscipleship.com. Thank you.